Hello and welcome to the Captain's Table podcast. I am your host, Dawn Deckman Mohler, and today our guest is Ace Smith. Ace is a top political consultant and is a partner at Bear Star Strategies, a political consulting firm based in San Francisco, California. He's worked on political campaigns in California and around the United States since 1972. Welcome, Ace.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure being here, Dawn.
I am so honored to have you as our guest today and looking forward to hearing kind of a little bit about how you began and some of the top stories that our audiences can't wait to hear about with some very high-profile politicians in our country and some of the things that are near and dear to your heart as we close out our podcast today. We're going to break for a real short break. Stand by and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Table with our guest, Ace Smith. So, Ace, tell me a little bit about how you got, how you got into politics, a little bit about your childhood and where the interest came from.
I'm not sure I got into politics in the sense of waking up one day and sort of realizing I loved it. I was, in a sense, immersed in politics probably almost from the day I was born. My father worked in the Attorney General's office for a gentleman named Pat Brown, who was then Attorney General, later became California governor.
Of course.
And the family was very close to the Browns in San Francisco and California. And my parents were so deeply involved in politics that my mom always told the story about her really acid test as to whether she would even date my father was that he was a Democrat. And secondly, my next oldest brother is named Adlai, after one of their great idols, Adlai Stevenson. I'm named Averill, after the great New York politician Averill Harriman.
I didn't know that.
So it really, came with the territory, and I must say, I was never, dragged kicking and screaming, loved every moment of it. And I became deeply involved myself, really. And again, a lot of this was through osmosis, but really at first with the George McGovern campaign in 1972. And I was a freshman in high school in San Francisco, and I just couldn't imagine how George McGovern wasn't going to just crush Richard Nixon. He had everything to say, all the issues. He had way more integrity. He was way smarter. Mm-hmm. Why wasn't this going to happen? And it was absolutely crushed when he got crushed himself. But that's one of those early lessons you learn in politics, and you persevere on and keep fighting.
That's right. How did you handle that loss? I mean, kind of pick things up. Did you take a look at some of the pros and cons of how it was ran, or what'd you learn from it?
Well, I was 13 years old, so I'm not sure I learned much more than that. Sometimes the best candidate doesn't always win.
This is very true. Were you involved in any of the? Listen, I'm older. We had a cabinets and opportunities in, I think, our junior high and high school to be class president and run campaigns. Were you involved in middle school or high school in any type of activities like that?
Oh, absolutely. I was in fact, the student body president of my high school.
Of course you were.
And this was 1976, and led a walkout of the students in protest over the firing of a number of the really great teachers at the school I was going to. And actually, it was my first experience with media, and we ended up on in the San Francisco Chronicle.
My goodness. So was that received well? Did you all go back to school the next day? And
it was received incredibly poorly. the principal
I just wanted to
of the
ask.
school called up my father and said that, or actually informed me that he was going to call my father, and I was going to be suspended 1 day for each student who walked out with me.
I laughed.
At which I said, let me give you his number. You're welcome to call him right now. Calling the man's bluff, he of course, his jaw dropped and not much more was said.
Oh my
And of
gosh.
course, I never got suspended.
That is really funny. That is a great story. Tenacity, right? You had, you obviously, it sounds like you had some influence at a very young age.
And also, most importantly, had parents who I always knew were going to back me up.
At all times, or just, I mean, it sounded like in that situation.
Well, pretty much
Yeah.
at all times. I mean, there
That's
may be, look, I'm not to say that there's not times when you do incredibly stupid things,
right.
but, I've always thought the job of a parent is to always take your side and then maybe privately tell you that they don't necessarily see eye to eye with you.
That's wisdom. That's and I know you have a couple kids. So you were so this happened in 76. What was the next step that was kind of leading you towards kind of a passion for politics?
Probably the next big step was my father ran for district attorney in San Francisco. I actually began running for district attorney in San Francisco in 1978.
And what was
And
your
he had
dad's name? I
actually,
apologize, Ace. What's your dad's name?
his name is Arlo Smith.
Arlo Smith.
He was
Okay.
district attorney in San Francisco for 16 years.
No
and
kidding.
He had lined up the endorsements going into the 1979 race, and this was 1978, of Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk, who my family was very close to. Of course, those plans changed rather dramatically when Supervisor White assassinated both of them in November of '78.
That's right.
And the really the tragic irony
Mm-hmm.
of it all was that what really propelled my father to beating the incumbent turned out to be the backlash from when the sitting DA tried to prosecute Supervisor Dan White, who was the assassin, and completely flubbed the prosecution and was just seen as completely incompetent from that time forward. So, in some really odd way, Harvey Milk and George Moscone really were the key points, the key reasons why my father was elected.
I remember seeing the film about Harvey Milk and not being involved in politics. Southern California girl, but not being involved in politics, more in acting. What do you remember about Harvey?
Harvey was an extraordinary person, and I only knew him really very peripherally. I was still a very young person. I had met him a number of times. I'll never forget meeting him and talking with him a long time. It must have been in the summer of 1975.
Right.
When we were all supporting a guy named Senator Fred Harris, who was running for president of the United States that year. And it's too bad we can't do these things in American politics anymore. But Harris had rented a huge RV and was driving cross country and literally like camping out every night and rolling into cities. And this was the final, stage of his kind of grand tour in an RV. And he pulled up into the lot of the Gold Gate Bridge area and held a big press conference there. And Harvey Milk was one of his big supporters, along with my family. And that was really the first time I talked to him for at length. And at that point, he wasn't even a supervisor, and he was off telling me about how he had a ponytail that was gone halfway down,
Yes.
past his shoulders, about how he was going to cut off the ponytail and start running, and thought he could get votes from every neighborhood. He was such a truly unbelievably charismatic person that even in a day when people would look sideways at you, even in San Francisco,
Yes.
if you remember the LGBTQ community, he even, believe it or not, even transcended that in many ways in the city, and became truly, I mean, the historic force. It really even understates who he was.
Well, it's a tragedy, and what a great loss to the community. And so glad to hear some stories about him. I'm honored to hear some stories about him and how your parents, we're friends with the family and his career also. Was growing up, was the dinner table talking about how was school today, this and that, or was it we're prepping for the next campaign, or what was that like?
It was pretty much nonstop political debate on whatever was going on in the world. And remember, during those times, you had the Watergate hearings, you had a lot of
Yes.
things. You had the Vietnam War.
Yes.
There were many, many things to be debated in the mix, and our dining room table, really every night was just a free-formed debate on politics with, sometimes a lot of shouting, yelling, curse words, everything else you can imagine.
I remember, I think it was a film, I can't remember which one, but Katharine Hepburn, it was her when she was young growing up. And your household table reminds me of what I learned about Katharine Hepburn's household table. Strong opinions, politics, encouraging the kids to just get out there and learn and share. I love that. So what high school did you go to again?
High school is still around. It's called Lick Wilmerding.
Okay. And that was right in San Francisco?
It was right in San Francisco. Yep.
Good. And so tell me then about next steps. Graduating high school. What?
Well, the next steps, I went on to UC Berkeley,
Yep.
and I took a few political science courses there and realized that what they were teaching had nothing whatsoever to do with politics.
Interesting.
And so at the time they were teaching, the kind of like the main thing they were teaching was essentially pluralism. And you took a course or two and you just realized that the theory did not meet the practice of what I had seen in politics and also in local government and state government. And so, I then did what anyone else would do, which is I found out that they gave out degrees for reading books. It was called English literature. And of course, I have a great passion for reading. And so I was like, what better deal is this in the world than doing that?
That's great.
And I never was going to become a lawyer or a doctor or anything else. And so I figured I might as well just thoroughly enjoy this experience. And that I did.
Just reading books. Is there one book that stands out that was revelatory for you?
That's a tough question because I read so much that I probably have a revelatory book every month. So,
so UC Berkeley, and then from there, where'd you go? What did you do when you graduated from college?
Well, my father was he ran for office when I was a junior, so I took the better part of my junior year off to volunteer on his campaign, which was truly an eye-opening experience to live a campaign, and especially one that you care so deeply about.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of like getting a degree in English literature. It dawned on me that people would pay, you to do something you love doing. So that's what I did my entire life. And, I started out of college, started being involved in running campaigns and really at a local level, and it did more and more. And then truly, I didn't really make a major change really until a lot of big life changes, but career-wise until the really late 80s, when it really dawned on me that I could be doing in politics in California the rest of my life, and I will never have learned about what it's like to do politics all over the United States.
Right.
So I went back to DC, and I realized at this point that really there wasn't people hadn't really professionalized or really in a systematic way understood how to do what we now call opposition research. And so I went back to the DCCC. I met with this guy named Rahm Emanuel, who was the political director, and I said, I really think I can help you because I can do this thing that I'm not sure is being done so well these days. And so he was nice enough to give me a race in Florida as kind of like a test to see what I could actually do. And I think by the time I came back from this little trip down to Florida, I think he was able to take one of the top races on his list and cross it off and not worry about it, and I worked on, a dozen or so other races with him that cycle. And then we became partners and did stuff all across the country. And so I really was able to, and I wasn't doing it because I loved research so much. Research is fine, and I enjoyed doing it at the time. I was really doing research to really kind of get involved in the national flow of politics and understand how everyone did what they did, and meet all the people who were doing the research, the polling, the TV commercials, and running campaigns at the highest levels.
I have never thought about all of, I see the end product of the research that is done in campaigns. And you know what? We're going to take a short break, and let me come right back. Hold on. Welcome back to the Captain's Table podcast with Ace Smith, and we're learning about how he catapulted into the political scene with the work he's did with Rahm Emanuel. So tell us a little bit more about that journey, and then what happened next.
Well, truly, that journey was just more about being everywhere across the United States and learning politics in a different way than I learned it in California. One of the funny things is that the structure of national campaigns is very different than the structure of the way campaigns run in California. There's a lot of reasons for that.
Okay.
But which we can get into. But it was very eye-opening to see how things were done and how they were done differently elsewhere, and to really have with what I was able to do, have a seat at the table and learn all of
that. So when you were working with him, did you partner with him in a consultant firm, or were you just, because you said you kind of became really great partners in this area. Is that when that started?
We had a firm. It was called the Research Group.
The Research Group.
Yeah, we did stuff all over America.
I apologize.
One of the first things we worked on was where I met some really wonderful people. We worked on Rich Daley's campaign in mayor in Chicago, which is, and that's where I met David Axelrod, who was doing all the TV commercials, and a number of other great people. It was really, and those were also, they were different days than now, in the sense that a lot of research is probably done very like impersonally. I mean, back in those days, you had to show up somewhere,
Yeah.
figure out what the records look like, probably have someone working with you and like Xerox like truckloads of documents and
Sure.
ask for more, and then and honestly just read through stacks and stacks of paper. And one of the most understood things about research is it's not the research that or per se that's the thing. It's the having the understanding enough of politics to look at a mountain of documents
Right.
and understand what's useful and what was not useful, and then understand when you find something useful, how you develop it and how you find out more, and what is the real value of that. Is it something that you can give to the press to develop? Is it something that's going to end up in one of your TV commercials? Is it something that's central to either a positive or negative argument you want to make?
Right.
That's the real key to it.
Is it well, I think it's challenging to, you're looking for information that's going to help the campaign, right? Whether it's negative or positive. I mean, it's again, I'm a consumer. I see the end product of what influencers like yourselves do in the campaigns.
And honestly, I don't think there's a huge. I think one of the things that mistakes people make is that you can't see this in separate buckets. Like the best campaigns I've ever seen are campaigns where you're driving a positive message for your candidate,
Yes.
which is in turn indirectly driving the negative message for your opponent.
Okay.
And there's nothing more powerful you can do in politics than that. And therefore, it's not just going out and making a negative argument on your opponent. It's rather taking the implicit negatives and the negatives you're going to develop, and even highlighting them, not only highlighting, but making them a central theme in the campaign and something that people are going to judge how to vote. That's the best thing you can do in politics in a candidate race.
Is there a particular branch of government that you prefer to work with, or whether it's a senator or a governor or a mayor or a lieutenant governor or president? Is there national or state? Is there anything in particular, or is it all as much fun? I guess.
I've always had a fun time and I actually worked in government for a while as well, and I've always had the most fun, really, with mayors and local
Okay.
politics, because that's where you can really make tangible changes and do things that you can look out the window and see the effect.
That makes so
and
much sense.
it goes from, it's not just in the theoretical realm. You're not putting in place a white paper that may have a impact 10 years down the line, and not to say that's not worthwhile.
Sure.
And then there's also the personality of the people you work with, which is a huge amount of it, which is kind of doesn't matter what level they're on. Are you working with someone who's bold and not afraid to make mistakes, and will do things that other people be afraid to do?
Mm-hmm.
Those are always the best people to work with. I mean, the person we're working with right now, who really is that person. You look in the dictionary, the pictures, there is Gavin Newsom.
Okay.
Someone who's just not afraid to take bold stances, not afraid to, you can go all the way back to what he did on gay marriage, and
Mm-hmm.
was roundly condemned by a number of people in his own party for a position which is now universally seen
Yes.
as the correct position. And to the most recent thing he's doing, working on trying to put a constitutional amendment into the United States Constitution, really to put a damper on gun violence.
Mm-hmm. Well, Gavin is, we are seeing him more and more these days. And when you work with for example, Governor Newsom, are you working directly with your clients, or are you working more with their team?
You have to do both.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll never be effective if you can't work with a team of people to make things. No one person can make everything happen. You have to, but you also have to have a real relationship with the
individual.
with the person. Otherwise, the whole thing won't work.
Well, there's a few people I'm looking at right now that our audience will definitely be aware of. Would love to hear some stories about. I won't mention them. I'll let you pick a few. Some good stories that you have on some. Whether it's. I'll let you choose. Tell us a little bit about some of the clients that we would know, aside from Governor Newsom.
Yeah, I mean, the clients you would know are Jerry Brown,
Yeah.
Kamala Harris. I did a lot of work with the Clintons. I ran a number of states as state director for Hillary Clinton in 2008.
Okay.
That was a lot of fun. And
what made that fun? What was fun about that?
Well, both of them are truly are remarkable people, and the thing that's funny about Hillary Clinton is not surprising, but is you rarely meet anyone in your life who has such just a truly a bright mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't believe. Like I'll never forget. I had a couple of occasions where I was just getting her ready for some event we were doing, and I would give her a piece of paper.
Yeah.
With the people she was introducing and some things about them, et cetera, et cetera. And she would look at the paper, and it was almost like a camera had taken an old-fashioned negative, and it was in her brain. And she would put it down, and she would go up, and she would do the whole thing.
Oh my gosh,
as
that's
if
amazing.
we had talked about it for an hour.
That's a gift.
That truly is a gift, and,
Mm-hmm.
and just truly a brilliant mind. And I also on that campaign spent a fair amount of time, especially traveling Texas, but also North Carolina and California with President Bill Clinton.
Yes.
And he is truly a force of nature. But really the thing, and most of, people, you could say a lot of things about him, but they've probably been said 100 times other places. But the thing that I would share that did strike me as quite remarkable was I had a number of occasions where I would start the day with him, and we would do maybe during the course of the day 5 to 10 events in different places. And I started to notice this pattern. He would show up, and it would be early in the morning, and he'd have a yellow legal pad of paper, and he would have written out, essentially the outlines of the argument he was going to make. And it was the thing about, like, when you hear Bill Clinton, it's not what you see all too often today, which is just a whole bunch of kind of things thrown together, in kind of like with no one's really making really an argument that goes from one end to another and trying to actually make sense, but rather just kind of throwing together a bunch of slogans and other things into something that resembles a speech. He would always start the day with this legal pad, which he had written out in his own handwriting, essentially the argument he was going to make that day, which was always on message.
Mm-hmm.
And he would start the day, and you would start, and you would maybe get, I don't know, 5 or 6 applause lines in the first stop, and then the next stop maybe 7 to 8. And by the end of the day, there may have been 25 applause lines. And what I've never seen anyone in my life who was so good and so well attuned that he was literally like taking feedback as he was speaking and improvising like a great jazz pianist.
Yeah.
Like as he went and making the material better at each stop. That's an extraordinary gift.
That is, but that is someone that's also listening to their audience.
Yeah, but I'll
A
tell you,
little bit.
give a speech and try and listen to the audience and take input at the same time.
No,
That is
that's hard.
no that is no small task.
Did you ever hear him play a saxophone?
No, 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 no. But I always love. I also really appreciate. He's also he's a fun person to talk to because he's a voracious reader, and so you can talk to him about just about anything, and he will have he will have like spent some time looking into it and having some knowledge of it. Just truly a remarkable mind.
Well, he was very likable. Do you have any little stories about Dianne Feinstein or Barbara Boxer?
Um, Dianne Feinstein
I meant to say
truly
Feinstein.
was, truly was. I always thought one of the great mayors of San Francisco,
Yeah.
and uh, I was just always amazed. And I worked in City Hall when she was mayor. I worked for the president of the board of supervisors, so I saw her up close. But I was always amazed at just what a real grasp of everything going on she had. She was not one of those people who delegated everything to people. And I think one of the things that people don't understand about running campaigns or running governments is the term micromanager is, I think, way overused. Uh, I've always thought that not the devils, but the diamonds are in the details. And that, yes, you need to have a big picture view of it all, but if you don't understand the details, you're not going to really understand what's going right and what's going wrong and why.
Right.
And she was one of those remarkable people who really had a grasp of the big picture, but also had a grasp of the details. And that's what made her such a great mayor. Barbara Boxer, God bless her, she was truly one of the great voices of California. And there was nothing better than watching her go in the United States Senate and wreck Jesse Helms Day on the floor of the Senate every day they were in session.
Now, we have our current Vice President, Kamala Harris, and you did some work with her. What are some of the highlights?
She is really I think, truly someone who's a product of, and I think this is a little bit misunderstood by the East Coast folks. She's a product of San Francisco politics, and what do I mean by that? When she came up, and when she was elected, there was, in order to really honestly move on in San Francisco politics, on any given night, you would probably have to be at 3 or 4 debates, 3 or 4 Democratic Club meetings. You were constantly being covered by 2 newspapers and 3 TV stations. It was almost like very few places in the country, almost like a mini presidential campaign.
Interesting.
Running for politics in San Francisco back in the days when her and Gavin Newsom are first elected. And that's really where she really honed her skills, and which are just marvelous to this day. And truly, a person with a big heart, but also a big game.
Yes, you have really worked with some wonderful people. Those are some great stories. I really enjoyed hearing that. We're going to take a very quick break, Ace, and we're going to come right back, okay? Please stand by. Welcome back to the Captain Table podcast. We're glad you guys are here listening to our guest, Ace Smith, today. Ace, I've really enjoyed hearing about just the beginnings of you being in politics and some highlights of your career and some of the things that you're currently doing. I'd like to pivot a little bit in our closing segment to what's near and dear to your heart with your foundation, BeyondDifferences.org. Would you like to share a little bit about the foundation, kind of the featured curriculum, the events, and let us know how we can get involved? I would really appreciate it. We've got about
Sure, thank you.
17 minutes on this part of the segment.
Okay, thank you. I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate it greatly. Really and truly, this is the creation of my wonderful wife, Laura Thomas. I just happen to be, I think, an able assistant. But there's kind of an interesting backstory, which is not surprisingly goes back to politics. Our daughter Lily was born with a craniofacial condition, and really and truly, it really wasn't an issue until she hit middle school. And then when she's hit middle school, what happens is she all of a sudden just gets dropped, ignored, and it truly, we didn't use words for it in those days.
Mm-hmm.
It later became, the words we use for it is social isolation.
Yes.
So we felt compelled as parents to take her out. We didn't want to, but take her out and have her homeschooled. And this actually led to a interesting, kind of set of events where, so she's being homeschooled, and I'm running Hillary Clinton's number of states for her in 2008. And when I went down to Texas, in North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to take Lily with me, and she went out and campaigned all over these states and met all these wonderful people. Yeah, it's just truly a great experience. And tragically, she, from medical complications, she passed away.
I'm so sorry.
But really and truly, what happened next was surprising, which is that we held a memorial service and told her story.
Mm-hmm.
At which point, kids from the community said, what can we do to help?
Yeah, sure.
So at that point, Laura had the idea of taking a number of them out to do these events at the local middle schools.
Yes.
On the issue of social isolation, but really the flip side of the coin of that is, how do you create inclusive, school communities, really is the positive side. And what happened was that, and we didn't know what, we were going to meet with, but what happened instead was just deep interest, deep demand, and lots of schools willing to say, we didn't know about this, we haven't thought about this, we should have, what can we do? And so Laura set up an organization called Beyond Differences. And really and truly, it's become just and really thanks to her, just a remarkable success. The curriculum and the programs are in schools in across the nation, 10,000 schools in red states, blue states, you name it. And it's been recognized, and a huge advocate for it is Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, who has also dedicated a chapter in his book to it. So it's truly heartening to see the message spread, and what makes the model of the organization, I think, also different than many others, is the theory is not to bring change from the top down,
Mm-hmm.
whether from schools administrators, et cetera, but rather to put the power in the hands of the children
Oh,
and to empower the teens to make the change. And thus, there's a teen board of directors for Beyond Differences, and the structure of the model is for students themselves to change their schools. And it's having tremendous success, and there's nothing truly that makes us happier.
well, I know that looking at the beyonddifferences.org website, there's a section you can click on. It says "Know Your Classmates." No one eats alone. Be kind online, and numerous educator training programs and national youth programs and crisis response toolkits are part of the what they do. I know you've got some featured curriculum, which is disability visibility, stand up for AAPI youth, queer visibility, and I'd love to talk about some of the events that you have. I'm looking at. I'd like to show up for the pickleball event benefit. That sounds fun.
Huh. Yep. And the thing that is, we do a lot of those are events we do for in schools.
Yes.
No Eats Alone and Know Your Classmates. Pickleball event is to raise money
Yes.
to help. And one of the things we're proudest about is that everything we provide to schools, and they're almost all public schools, are for free, because our belief is that otherwise the teachers would be digging into their own pockets to pay for them,
Yes.
the materials.
The some of the ways that we tell us some of the ways that we can get involved, Ace.
Oh, just go to the website, beyonddifferences.org, and there's a zillion ways to get involved. You can help bring us into schools in your community. You can help us raise money for the cause. You can just simply spread the word to relatives and friends and others.
Well, our listeners out there, this is a wonderful organization, and it's timely, and it's very, very important. And your wife has done a wonderful job. So please check out beyonddifferences.org. And kind of as we wrap up our podcast show today, Ace, is there anything that you want us to know about Bear Star that's important for now, for the upcoming elections, I guess? Any projects that you're working on?
Yeah, you probably know. I mean, the thing that I think we have the most fun working on these days is with Governor Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
And so just watch that.
Okay.
Watch.
We're going to watch that closely.
Yep.
There's a lot going on. Now, for our audience's understanding, Ace lives in San Francisco, so I think we might have heard some trolley cars in the background. I that's what I'm thinking, and I really enjoyed visiting with you today. I know you have a very busy schedule, and we just really appreciate you coming on our show. So we're going to wrap it up for today, and thank you so much for joining the Captain's Table podcast today, and thank you so much, Ace. I hope to, maybe after the elections, get you back on the show and have some new conversations.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much, Ace. You have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.